Welcome to Building Your First Home, the podcast where we provide advice and simplify the idea of building your first home. Brought to you by Turnkey Building Group, I'm one of your hosts, Justin Engelkey, and I'm joined, as always, by Jordan Wilson. Welcome to the show, Jordan.
Great to be here. In this episode, we'll break down how a well-thought-out space can transform a home, making it not only more aesthetically pleasing, but also highly functional. We'll discuss key principles and practical tips for optimising layouts and what to consider when looking at the right floor plan for you.
Joining us today, we have Florin, the Director of Studiospace Projects. Florin has 15 years of experience in building design. He has made a significant impact in the industry from his Melbourne-based studio. His experience covers an impressive array of projects, from working in the volume build space and more recently working on multi-million-dollar luxury homes and townhouse developments across Victoria. Florin's expertise is vast and varied. He's passionate about staying current with trends, ensuring that his designs are always at the forefront of innovation and functionality. Welcome to the show, Florin.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about your background and about your business Studiospace.
I've been operating almost 15 plus years. Originally, I started as a freelance designer, just basically doing small pergolas and garages and things like that. So during TAFE, I did 2.5 years of advanced diploma of building design. Then I got a job straight away. I got very lucky. I started with a small boutique builder. I was with them for about 4 years, which I've learned quite a lot. I was working together with their existing designer as well, so he taught me quite a lot. And I still work with them now. Then I ventured off and worked for two of the biggest builders, biggest volume builders in Victoria.
Who are they?
Can I name names?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So I worked for Henley.
Yep.
Henley Homes, and then ventured off to Metricon Homes.
Nice.
So that was amazing. Learned lots of things as well. And then I went to a small builder. I wanted to test the waters with Modular builder called Anchor Homes.
Yeah.
That was great as well. I learned lots of things. The construction methods there is completely different than a standard build. So,
tell us a little bit about the modular build.
Yeah. So it's much more engineering based. So from the ground up, you're starting off with stilts. Subframe is all steel. So then you have to think about transporting those massive buildings as well. There's different challenges than a just standard construction method. So the thought process behind that was different. After a couple of years, it's always been at the back of my mind, like, do I stop doing freelancing and go on my own, or do I go and work for an architectural firm? So bit the bullet. I've always been reserved. So I've always been a bit scared to go on my own, but finally bit the bullet and started Studiospace Projects.
Haven't looked back since.
No, haven't looked back since. Yeah. Honestly, it's been the best thing I've done.
I think a lot of people say that. Like, you finally go out on your own and you never really regret it. So
No.
How long have you been in the Studiospace business?
So Studiospace has been operating as a company just over a year, but I've been freelancing since 2006 onwards.
Right. And what sort of projects do you mainly work on with Studiospace?
At the moment, it's 95% custom.
So you mentioned 95% custom, but are you also doing some other work?
I'm actually working with a couple of small builders for houses that fit on smaller lots. Seeing that the market's kind of heading that way as well, especially with the market, the way it's looking at the financials and the tighter budgets and things like that.
That's exactly what we're working with every day. Like, a lot of clients are working towards a pretty strict budget, and with the cost of land and, of course, the land size is getting smaller, we do need to be a little bit more strategic with what we're designing.
And obviously it's a unique challenge in itself, taking a small area, but trying to fit a functional design in there. You're still incorporating all those elements that people need to see in a home, but you're trying to fit that into a much smaller area.
Exactly right. So I'm seeing that I get clients coming over to me and say, hey, I've got a small 400 square meter block, but I want some cool features in it. But, the other thing is the budget as well. So the biggest challenge, fitting a custom looking home on the budget on a smaller lot, it's actually harder than if you're working on a big multi-million-dollar home with endless amount of money.
Yeah, well, there's limited spaces, there's setbacks to take into account. If it's in an estate, there's the design guidelines you need to take into consideration, all while thinking about the dollar at the end of the day.
Exactly. So I think that's a challenge in itself, but we are working on something that I think by the time this podcast is out, we'll probably announce it, right?
Potentially. No, I think so, yeah. We're working on a few floor plans together that I think will be great, and basically what we're discussing today, trying to fit something that fits on these smaller blocks, taking budget into account, but making these floor plans like really functional and basically just hitting the market and what they're after.
What are some strategies you might use when you're designing these homes on a smaller block to increase the usability of the space?
The first thing that every client needs to think about is what their family needs. I think that's the most important thing, is like every family has their own needs and wants. So for example, if you're a tradie, let's say we think about having maybe a little bit deeper garage.
So kind of starting with like the fundamentals of what that family needs, and then I guess getting that right.
Yep.
And then from there.
Do you do a lot of entertaining? Do you do a lot of cooking? You got to think about, even before you buy the block, I think, is where's north facing?
Well, I guess like a lot of the time with clients that we're dealing with on a daily basis, that we're taking into account the whole picture, exactly like what you're saying. You need to look at like how they live. Sometimes you even need to ask them how they live so they can repeat it back, because they might not necessarily think of it from that respect. And they're just thinking, I want a nice home, but they don't necessarily know what needs to be in that home to suit their family.
Exactly. You might think that's a bit early on to think about that sort of stuff, but it makes a big impact if you think about it and pick it up straight away before you start the design process.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess an important element there too is always having that involvement from the early stage of land selection to make sure you're not going to be purchasing a block of land where it doesn't fit a home that actually meets those requirements as well.
Exactly right.
Well, we've seen that a lot, haven't we?
We've said it a lot.
Yeah. People going out, buying their own block of land, coming in with an idea of a home type in mind, and we know that it doesn't fit on that block because of a number of reasons.
Correct.
On that then, what would you consider an element to make a good floor plan? Like the flow, functionality, nice kitchens, nice en-suites.
And maybe like incorporate in a good kitchen layout, for example. If you've got a kitchen with lots of bench space in there, but still keeping it within that smaller space, you're getting all the functionality of a larger home in the smaller space.
Yep, true. Yeah, so basically what makes a good home from a design element is the flow. The flow of the home is from as soon as you walk in, as soon as you walk through the garage. Where's your main focal point? For example, if you're a chef, if you're entertaining a lot around the kitchen, is your kitchen around the dining area, around the living and the outdoor?
Yeah.
You have to think what your family needs from the get-go. That's where you have to start to have a good design.
I guess it's the use of the space is the main consideration, and making sure that the spaces are designed around the ideal usage of the space.
Exactly right.
And I guess people talk about like when they walk into a home, they get a certain feeling, whether it's going to be right for them or not. And that's probably just them looking at it from their perspective as a family, saying, well, this suits the way we live, but it might not suit the next person.
Exactly right.
And then obviously you do a lot of custom work now where you could really tailor a design to an individual's requirements. But you also mentioned you used to do a lot of work in that volume build space with a couple of major builders. In that approach, like how do you create designs that address the needs of multiple people?
Yeah, I've worked in a volume building circle for quite a while, and I did notice that they don't have many non-standard options. If you think about it, it wouldn't cost much to do, but have a massive effect, right? For example, I'll give you a small example. In your main living area, adding raked ceiling through that section, but not bringing in the full expensive, let's say, raked ceiling with rafters. Why don't you just do scissor trusses, right? Yeah. You can still get your ducts through there. You can still get enough insulation through there, but you still get that raised ceiling look, nice, grand.
So for those listening, the rake ceiling is like a peaked triangle.
Yeah, your ceiling's basically in a triangle.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So it gives the illusion of extremely high ceilings.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And is that a huge cost to do?
Not really. If you think about it, compared to if you were to use rafters instead of the scissor truss. So when you go to your designer, just ask them to add in the scissor truss instead of the rafters.
Yeah. Would a rake ceiling work on every floor plan?
Yeah, majority of them, yes. Yeah, it would. Unless you have a 2-story, then
of course,
you have to factor that in.
Unless you have a big mountain in the floor upstairs.
Yeah, but any pitched roof, you can use scissor truss to get that effect.
It's good to know.
I guess also you touched on sort of options before, and I guess that's another way where if a purchaser maybe doesn't have the budget or the knowledge or time even to go down the custom avenue, when they're looking at a volume type floor plan, what they really should be looking at is what options there are to tailor that floor plan to their requirements so that without needing to start from scratch, they can create a home that works for them.
Exactly. So that's where we're working on at the moment to apply these custom designed elements to a more affordable floor plan. I think this is where our new designs are going to be focused on, which hasn't really been done much.
Not really.
Yeah.
I think there's obviously a massive demand for that. And I feel like people don't have to have a huge home for it to be nice. It's like these small things that we're talking about that can add a massive impact. Obviously on the way that someone's going to live in that house, but also on the future resale or the value of that home too. So like something like a rake ceiling might not be a huge cost outlay, but when you go to resell that property, it could add significant value.
Correct.
Some other elements that a buyer could consider where it's quite cost effective, but has a big impact on making their home feel like it might be bigger or like it might be a more high-end home.
One of the smallest things I do see at the moment is when you're raising your ceiling up to 27 high, a lot of clients just don't increase their doors up as well.
Yeah, I've seen
it cheapens the look of the
doesn't look
home.
good, no.
I think I tell all my clients just one of the first things you do when you raise your ceilings, raise the doors and your window head heights
That
as well.
comes from an experienced designer because you see a lot of homes with their 9-foot ceilings.
Yep.
And I feel like it's if people are going out to display villages, we touched on this last episode, but going out and speaking to inexperienced salespeople, they'll get you the 9-foot ceiling cost, but they're not thinking about raising bulkhead heights, raising window heights, raising internal plus external door heights.
Yep.
I've seen homes where the internal door heights are all being raised, but the bulkheads are being kept the same. And there's this difference and it doesn't look
It's
very
a
good.
lack of care or attention to detail.
That's right.
From potentially a lazy sales consultant.
And I think for the average person walking through, they probably wouldn't be able to point out what doesn't feel right, but we talk about how a house feels. And those small things make a huge impact.
Exactly. It comes with the experience as well.
100%.
I think it's also on that when you're doing changes in a home or you're doing upgrades, it's being consistent throughout the home with what you're doing, because nothing says cost cutting more than seeing upgraded items in maybe the main spaces of a house and then sometimes secondary rooms where you can see costs were cut.
Yep.
And it almost cheapens the product in its
Keep
own
it
way.
consistent throughout.
Correct.
Another thing is you're having certain tiles in one area, and you're changing different tiles in a different area.
Agree.
Just keep them all the same.
I
Just
think
keep it simple.
Especially if this podcast is to educate first home builders, I feel like don't try and do it all at once.
Yep.
Stick to something that's going to sell well in the future, because the idea of your first home is it's generally not going to be your last home. So thinking from like a broader point of view and building something that's going to appeal to the masses when you sell it.
Exactly right.
By keeping consistency and things like that.
A lot of clients don't think about, I guess, is the landscaping, front landscaping. Do allow that in your budget. It's a big thing because you're moving into a brand new home, and most of the times you're going to move in there and you won't have landscaping enough for at least a year.
Well, how often do you see houses in new developments and you drive around and nothing gets done because people haven't allowed for it in their budget?
You need a bit of money.
It's not just go to Bunnings, get a shovel.
No, it all adds up, honestly.
There's a real misconception that you'll go out there on Saturday and Sunday for a weekend, a couple of mates, and it'll all be done.
Yep.
And you'll be living in a landscape home. There's a lot more involved. than
People
that.
spend money on upgrading their facades and they want their home to present a certain way.
Exactly right.
You've got to make your landscape. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to go over the top, but it does need to be consistent with the home and be presentable. On that, actually, what facade trends have you been seeing lately? What are some things that people are really wanting?
Definitely curves are in, and I think they will be in for a while. Arches as well.
Yep.
If you think about it, they don't really cost that much more than a normal build would. Yes, obviously you're paying the brickie a bit more to cut the brick and things like that.
But the impact it has.
The impact he has, especially on a first home, it's tremendous.
I guess the more we see these elements too, the more your bricklayers get to be open to doing it. People are resistant at first. So they just want the easy square box walls. But I think the market now is demanding facades that look more interesting or homes that have feature elements. They don't just want a cheap box to live in. You're spending a lot of money building a house now. You can't get away from that fact. At least it may as well be a property that presents well.
Exactly right.
Agreed.
Exactly right.
There's a few builders out there that are doing it and they're pretty well received and they're looking very good in the estate. So it's nice to see some differentiation.
Yeah. Another style is barnyard style.
Yeah, nice.
As
Yeah,
well,
nice.
with high pitches. Yeah, you think about 45-degree pitches. You might have even the nice feature triangle window.
So picturing like the typical American
style.
home.
That's right.
Yeah,
Bring in some stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to break the budget to get that style as well. So
What are your thoughts on the Hamptons facade?
I actually don't mind. I think, look, Hamptons is a facade that will be around for a while.
For sure.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Like it's been done,
Yep.
but it's going to stay relevant.
Yeah, and it has to be done right though.
That's right.
Even like I see a lot of builders cheapening out on the posts, for example. That style needs that actual thick 130 mil and under posts.
I guess a cheap Hampton style looks like a cheap Hampton
Exactly
style.
right.
You can't
Exactly
get away
right.
from it. If you're going to do a style like that, invest the money, do it properly and make it look right. Or otherwise go to a different style that's more cost effective.
Yep.
Sell that lifestyle.
On that too, obviously there's trends for what we're seeing now that people are looking for. What trends do you think could age badly over the next 5 to 10 years?
Next 5 to 10 years or sooner.
I don't know.
Well, what have we seen in the past? We've seen the reddy, orangey bricks.
Purple.
They've come and gone.
Yeah, that's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely gone. Stackstone.
Stackstone's
gone.
It's gone, I think.
Stackstone
get rid of that.
Been there in the first place.
No, get rid of that.
What would be, okay, then rather than thinking what might fade, so if you were building your first home today and you're thinking future resale, what would you go with today?
Something that presents well from pretty much all angles. Like personally, I like the modern Mediterranean look, which has the curves and arches and the more warm palette.
It's very popular.
It
now.
is.
Very popular.
I think it stands out too. I think you want to stand out a little bit. You've got, in new developments, you might have 2,000-3,000 homes and you do want to stand out a little bit if you want to sell your property for maximum.
Yep.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think you'll break the budget to actually get that style.
Agreed. Would your advice be to try and continue that sort of style or theme through the house as much as possible?
You can, but you can do it either by bringing structurally the same style throughout. So you're adding arches and curves inside the home. Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to overdo it. Honestly, just have 1-2 arches and a curve.
In like
is
a
plenty,
main
right?
feature area or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just bring in the Mediterranean furniture in your home.
That's an easy way.
That's an easier way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess it's also future-proofing your home in a sense where if you do want to change styles later on, you can adjust some pieces of furniture and it's not ripping out walls and redoing whole sections of a home.
Exactly.
So recently the National Construction Code has slightly changed. I only want to touch on it quickly today, but can you just give us a brief rundown of what that means for people now building houses?
Yeah, so now 7-star has come in.
Well, previously 6-star.
Yes.
Now 7.
Yep. Now it's formally 7. So we have to think about the construction methods a little bit more in regards to energy efficiency inside the home.
Yep.
I see costings of windows glazing going up a bit more because of that, and just general ways of energy efficiency throughout the home. The costings might go up.
Yeah.
Because of that.
So to achieve the higher energy efficiency, we need to
increase the insulation. For example, the battens inside in the roof, in the wall space. We might have to introduce insulation potentially inside the home, or more energy efficiency appliances and solar panels, the hot water systems.
So these are
we
all
just have to think about these a bit more.
They're all good things, though.
They're all good things, correct. Long term, it will save a client money.
So it'll save you on like running costs.
Yep.
Your home's warmer.
Yep.
In
More
winter,
cozier,
cooler
correct.
in summer.
We don't want to go back to having closed off rooms everywhere like we used to. So
no.
Although I think something that anyone building for the first time should be really aware of is a lot of builders, to reduce cost and get around these new requirements, have been making changes like reducing window sizes, reducing door sizes.
Yep.
And so you're finding now bedrooms don't have nice big windows to let light in. They've got small, narrow windows to help increase that energy assessment or that energy rating, So I think it's really important that people are very conscious of that if they're looking at a display home, for example, and purchasing that, check the plans thoroughly. Make sure that the window and door layout that you're being provided with matches what you're seeing. Yep. And if it doesn't, take into account the fact that the home may not feel the way this home feels anymore.
Exactly right. And that's one of the first conversation you have with your designer is make sure that the house complies with this. Reach for 7-star and above if you can.
Yeah. Just touching on your point, Jordan, with the volume build space, the display homes would have all been built, most of them, pre-MCC. So what you're walking through will be 6-star compliant, but it might not necessarily be 7-star compliant. So ask those questions about will these windows be the same size? Because what you're walking through looks nice and open and bright, but it's not
Depending
might
on
not be
your
the same.
builder, did they use the cheap way of hitting 7-star or did they use the right way of hitting 7-star?
Exactly.
That's the question.
Yep. That's one of the first changes. To add to that, so the energy raters, they look at all the appliances, pretty much whole of home requirements that the raters now have to look at, where before it wasn't really a requirement, but a few more things on the checklist now.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's Victoria specific, I think, that
Yep.
whole of home requirement. Yeah.
And I know there was one last sort of change with that NCC, the widening of hallways.
Correct. Yeah. So that's the accessibility. To put it in a nutshell, the hallways have to be a certain width, basically for wheelchair access. So the hallways have to be increased, doorways have to be increased. The way that doors swing have to be changed. For example, in a toilet, you have to have a certain clearance from the front of the pan to the actual door swing itself
To allow for a wheelchair.
to allow for wheelchair or accessibility purposes.
And
not
so this is
necessarily
for
wheelchair,
every
but yeah,
home?
every home has to have compliance like that, and also have to think about adding extra support inside showers for future handrails.
So essentially we're future-proofing homes to be wheelchair compliant,
Correct.
more sustainable, more energy efficient.
Yeah, we're looking for future-proofing for when we get older.
Yeah,
For sure.
Fair enough.
Well, I guess the building code, it's always changing. The building industry is always changing.
Yep.
What do you think we're going to see, from here going forward, some changes that might be there in the way houses are built or designed?
I want to see different construction methods. I want to open up doors from the construction methods from overseas, how they achieve these ratings.
True.
Yep.
So
Well, I know in some European countries, like obviously their temperature extremes are a lot different to us. Like they have freezing temperatures. Their homes are obviously built different to the way they are here in Melbourne.
Yep.
So maybe seeing some construction methods like that.
yeah, I'm seeing windows already. So window manufacturers, even clients, they're reaching out to overseas companies for windows to reach these.
Well, they're probably
Like-
already thermally compliant.
Like
so-
UPVC style?
Yeah, I've seen some PVC styles. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like modular construction, like building with like tilt-up panels? I know there's a couple of companies in like WA, and maybe it's coming here soon, but I know that their energy efficiency is 8-9 star, and then their build times are 2 or 3 months. Do you feel like you see that coming?
In custom fields, I do. Just not in the volume build space, but in the custom build, yeah, I do see it a lot, mainly for basements, things like that.
Yeah.
Not so much for ground floor to up first
fair
floor.
enough. Yeah.
But I do see it a little bit. Yeah.
So basements, do you think basements will become more mainstream going forward? Or?
I think so. Seeing that, yeah, in a city, it's definitely become mainstream because you want to utilize
Cost of land.
the most available land you have. So yeah, I think it will come in.
Do you think in the volume space, though, they might ever introduce more modular type designs to cut down building costs and help buyers get into homes that are
I
more
think so.
affordable?
I think that's coming in as well.
Yeah.
It's you can't avoid it. You know, people are tighter on budgets as well, and the construction methods. I mean, you're building a home inside the warehouse. You don't have to worry about weather.
True.
So
I guess timeframes. I mean, the only consideration will be the cost for this, but I'm sure moving forward there'll be.
Yeah, I must say it does cost a bit more.
Yeah,
Because it's such a untouched field if you think about it. So
that's true. You need specialized trades. You obviously
exactly.
need places to manufacture these
Transport.
walls.
the transport is a massive
Transport,
thing as well.
Yeah.
For sure. But then again, if that started to become more common going forward, we'd probably see a lot of those costs come down the more streamlined that process becomes. And there probably could be potential cost savings as well with the timeframes of building and the need for different trades on site.
I think modular at the moment is when you're like a third, fourth home buyer and, you want to retire, in a farm somewhere.
And it's
On
difficult.
acreage and access, for trades is difficult as well. I think that's where I'm seeing most of the modular at the moment.
What's some advice that you would give to listeners when it comes to choosing the right floor plan?
Just do your research, and best advice is think about what your family needs over, resale and all of that. It's at the end of the day, what does your family need? As I mentioned before, do you cook? Do you entertain? You trade, you need extra storage.
Yep.
Think about those things earlier on for long-term saving as well. So,
Sure. That's some great advice.
yeah, and don't overcapitalize. Try not to overcapitalize.
That's also very good
Very
advice.
good advice. True.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Florin. It's been great having you. And I'm sure we'll be catching up again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Building Your First Home, brought to you by Turnkey Building Group. We hope you found our discussion insightful and feel more confident as you embark on your home building journey.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to Building Your First Home on your favourite podcast platform. Also, follow us on social media at Turnkey Building Group for the latest updates and home building tips. We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to share your thoughts, experiences, and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, have a great day and happy building.